right, your next question. You preached that we would have new bodies and heaven would be here on earth at the resurrection.
Thank God for that, right?
What do you think people are seeing when they claim to see heaven? There are dozens of books in Christian retail that tell stories of people who died and saw people in heaven. What are your thoughts?
Paul's expert on that. Post near-death experiences.
I think that this ties to the earlier question about what happens after death. There's lots of studies in the last several decades on near-death experience. And it's cross-cultural. It's even when you look at the different cultures and what people report, a lot of it is varied, but some things are very similar. To me, it fits with the biblical teaching that after death, there is something that we consciously experience, but that it isn't the final state, because again, whatever someone's experiencing, they're not experiencing in their body. It's this detachment from the body. So it's not the final state. That will come with the resurrection. And there's a lot of debate about, well, how much data can you trust from these near-death experiences? There's some people who, die on the operating room table, let's say, and they'll be revived and come back and talk about things, seeing things that aren't at all biblical. So I'm not suggesting or claiming that everything someone says they experience is actually true to reality or that. I'm simply saying that it does suggest there is some empirical evidence for existence after death apart from the body. And some of the most interesting cases of this, I think, are what are called veridical or corroborative near-death experiences, where what people experience isn't a bright light in some heavenly place, but what they experience when they come back is they say that they experience coming out of their body and then actually witnessing conversations, or there's one example of a woman in Seattle, I think it was, where she died on the operating room table, came back several minutes later and said that what happened to her is when she had left her body, had floated down the hospital corridor, out the window, and had seen the hospital roof and had noticed a red tennis shoe out there. And then she came back into her body and shared this story, and a nurse went and checked out this window, and there was a red tennis shoe thrown up on the roof. So I think it's really interesting data that humans can transcend their bodies in terms of existence.
But it's also very funky, which is why I wouldn't put any credibility on the details of what people say or what they... Because sometimes it can just be neurological poppings as the brain is shutting down. It can feel euphoric. I had that happen to me when I was 12. I got this big sledding accident, and I was passing out, and I was very blissful, and I was waiting for the Virgin Mary to show up because I was a Catholic boy, and Mary was the only one I trusted in heaven, so I was waiting for Mary to show up. Never happened, but the brain can just, lacking oxygen, can have all these kind of experiences, and then your own belief system. I mean, it's kind of coincidental that when the Mormon visits heaven, she finds a Mormon heaven, right? And everyone's got their own kind of tailor-made heaven, so they can't all be right. Maybe some of it is God personalizing, something to them, but it also could just be they're projecting onto an experience that the brain's having that it feels very real to them, but in fact, there's that recent book I read, Proof of Heaven. Any of you read that? Proof of Heaven, done by that neurologist, a neurosurgeon, and he went into a coma, was like brain dead for a week, and then comes up with all these. Now, it just was not a very biblical view of heaven. It was a good read, kind of interesting. But if the Bible's true, all of his stuff can't be. So I just wouldn't leverage. The vertical stuff that Paul talks about, that is interesting because you have evidence for it and stuff. But the details of what people see when they die and go to heaven, I would just be careful.
It's a lot of quote marks.
I know, right? But take it seriously.